There is a paradox occurring on American highways. Trucks weighing dozens of tons continue to roll tirelessly. Goods are still fully stocked in supermarkets, but behind the wheel, many drivers are living in a harsh reality. They are working more than ever and earning less than ever. Many drivers left bitter comments. The road transport industry is considered finished. It will never recover. The road transport industry is in a terrible state. We struggle to get by every day. It's really discouraging. I am a newly graduated truck driver. Just received my license on Monday. Am I making a mistake by choosing this profession? And nothing is clearer than the numbers. In 2025, the average fare will be only $1.93 per mile, lower than the break-even point of $2.25. This means that each mile driven does not bring in profit but is heading straight into losses. A driver who runs 100,000 miles a year could be in the red by up to $30,000 to 70 hours a week, not to build the American dream, but to try to keep it from collapsing. From the golden age of highway cowboys to the race to the bottom of the free market, this is the story of how an industry that once sustained the middle class is now eroding them. Are you ready to face the truth? Before running more and losing more, the American truck driver profession had a completely different era. A time when being a truck driver was not a gamble with cash flow, but a ladder to the middle class. In 1935, the Motor Carrier Act was enacted. It may sound dry, but it's like a giant pressure valve placed on the transportation market. Not everyone can jump in. The fare is regulated. Competition is limited. And most importantly, profits are not driven down to the bottom just because someone offers a few cents less. The shipping prices at that time were about 50% higher compared to the post-market opening period. If we translate it into an easily understandable image, each trip is like a contract sufficient to cover the cost of the wheels, fuel, and even the life behind the wheel. A driver can support a family, buy a suburban house, send their child to a public university without having to live in a state of penny pinching. But more important than money is identity. They are called the cowboys of the highway. A man, a machine weighing dozens of tons, and a highway stretching to the horizon. In the cabin, the CB radio waves crackle through the night. An analog social network connecting people far from home but not alone. They don't just transport goods. They keep America running. If viewed from a modern MBA perspective, it is an interesting model, a profit margin thick enough to reinvest in people. When prices are not compressed to the minimum level, businesses have the space to pay stable wages, build unions, and create long-term predictability. The system then does not maximize every cent. It optimizes sustainability. And it is that stability that creates something rarely seen today: professional dignity. You don't ask a driver how much they earn. You ask which route they run. So what has caused a structure that was sufficient to sustain an entire middle class to gradually unravel when the market door was thrown wide open? What truly flooded in? Opportunity or a race to the bottom? We will step into the turning point of 1980, where the pressure valve is fully opened and the wheel of history begins to accelerate. The year 1980 was not just a policy milestone. That was the moment the brake of an entire industry was lifted off the wheel. The Transportation Deregulation Act was born with the sweet promise: more competition, lower prices, a more efficient market. In MBA terms, that means unleashing supply forces, optimizing logistics costs, and increasing resource allocation efficiency. Sounds like a perfect case study on CNBC. But let's look at the numbers. Before 1980, America had about 20,000 transportation companies. 4 decades later, that number exceeded 500,000. Imagine a city with 20,000 grocery stores suddenly sprouting 500,000 more, all selling the same product. The number of drivers also increased from 1.1 million to 1.9 million people, but the pie of goods hasn't increased accordingly. Result: too many trucks chasing too few loads. When supply exceeds demand, the market does not negotiate with emotions. It adjusts by price. And prices started to slide. In the financial report, the decrease in shipping costs is good news. Consumers benefit. Retail businesses optimize profit margins. But behind the Excel spreadsheet, there is a variable that doesn't show: people. When prices are driven down, the steel in the engine doesn't get cheaper, diesel fuel doesn't get cheaper, the only thing that gets squeezed is the driver's income. The competition is gradually turning into a game of who can endure longer. New companies entering the market are willing to offer lower prices to win contracts. The next one must be lower than the previous one. A downward spiral that analysts call a race to the bottom. And here is the greatest paradox. Freedom for businesses does not equate to freedom for workers. When risks are pushed down to individuals, while the advantages of scale are held by large entities, freedom becomes more of a marketing buzzword than a real state. So, the question arises, if a completely free market leads to prices being continuously driven down, who really controls the game? And when profits start to thin out like a sheet of paper, where will the system look to cut next? In the next section, we will delve into the per-mile pay mechanism, where a driver's lifetime begins to be valued by the silence between the wheel rotations. After 1980, the market was liberated. But the most profound change does not lie in the number of companies or the fare rates. It lies in a seemingly technical detail: the way wages are paid. From hourly wages to pay per mile. Sounds reasonable. Run a lot, earn a lot. High efficiency, high income. A perfect model in the presentation slides of economists. But the reality on the highway is completely different. Imagine a driver's workday as a sand timer. Sand keeps flowing, but money only falls when the wheels roll. All the remaining silences are invisible voids. At major ports like Los Angeles or Long Beach, the waiting time can stretch from 2 to 6 hours just to enter the gate. At oil fields or cargo staging areas, waiting times of 2 to 24 hours are not uncommon. And during that entire period, income is zero. That's not a system error. That is the design of the system. A driver can be present for 70 hours each week, but only about half of that time is actually paid. If translated into a familiar image, you enter the office for 14 hours each day, but only get paid for 7 hours. The rest is referred to by a very light term: waiting. In 2019, the median income of drivers working at ports in California was only about $8,000 per year, a figure that makes many people double-check if any zeros are missing, while they operate vehicles weighing dozens of tons, responsible for a supply chain worth billions of dollars. Financially, the per-mile pay model helps businesses transfer time risk to the driver. If there are traffic jams, if the terminals are overloaded, if there are paperwork issues, the costs no longer lie on the company's balance sheet. It lies on the driver's biological clock. And when time is not valued, what happens to life? The comments repeat one sentence: I missed another holiday again. Not because of an accident, not because of an unavoidable incident, but because the delivery schedule changed at the last minute, or because the truck got stuck in an endless line. Burnout in the transportation industry doesn't explode like a blast. It's like a small crack on a windshield, widening a little more each day until the entire glass shatters. If viewed from a modern management perspective, this is a short-term cost-optimizing model. But in the long run, it erodes the most important asset: people. When life is divided into miles, and every waiting minute has no economic value, careers gradually turn into endurance races. The question arises, if you work almost all your waking hours during the week, but still cannot control your income, is that still freedom? And as thousands of people start leaving the industry, is the issue with personal motivation? Or with the very pay structure? In the next part, we will look at the picture in 2025, where fares have fallen to historic lows, and the consequences of this model are becoming clearer than ever. If you are interested in the stories behind the numbers and want to follow this journey in full, you can subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next analyses. If 1980 was the moment the brakes were released, then 2025 is when the car will be hurtling down the slope out of control. On the surface, everything looks like a familiar cycle of recession. But as we peel back each layer of data, what emerges is not just a drop in freight rates, but a structure tightening its own grip. First layer, spot market, when prices are in freefall. On the load boards, it's not hard to see prices ranging from $0.5 to $1 per mile. Shipments that used to pay $3 mile during the boom are now down to under $2 round trip. Imagine you used to sell a product for $30. Now the market forces you to sell at 19 while the production cost remains at 21 or 22. You are no longer optimizing profit. You are selling below cost. In financial terms, that is a negative margin operation. In real life, it is. The more you run, the deeper you sink. The spot market is no longer an opportunity. It has become an auction floor, where the winner is the one who accepts the thinnest profit. Second layer, diesel prices. Costs don't follow suit. In many areas, diesel still hovers around $4 per gallon. An average truck runs about 6.5 miles per gallon, equivalent to $0.62 per mile just for fuel. If the total fare is $1.93 mile, fuel has consumed nearly 1/3. And for many owner-operators, this figure accounts for 35–40% of their revenue. Imagine you have a pizza with 10 slices. Before you even have time to pay salaries, insurance, or car installments, 4 slices have disappeared just because of fuel costs. When fares drop but fuel prices do not decrease correspondingly, profit margins are squeezed like a compressed spring to its limit. The third layer, insurance, a blow from behind. A new carrier may have to pay $20,000, $25,000 per year in insurance premiums. Just one minor incident or an unfavorable safety record, and the premium can increase by 25–35% after just one renewal. For a fleet of 10–15 vehicles, it's like receiving an unexpected bill worth tens of thousands of dollars, which must be paid immediately. In the report, this is referred to as risk adjustment. But for small businesses, it resembles an undercurrent that can capsize a boat at any moment. And then time, once an ally, becomes an enemy. Immediate costs, fuel, wages, repairs, tolls, operating fees. But revenue, usually net 30, net 45, or even net 60 days. It means you have delivered the goods, paid all the costs, but the money is still somewhere in the payment chain. To survive, many carriers have to use factoring and lose an additional 2–5%. This is the cash flow paradox. Receivables are slower than payables. A silent, unassuming spiral, but it erodes week by week. Not to mention, the federal registration fee can reach $2,000, $3,000 per vehicle per year. A fleet of 15 vehicles means $45,000 must be spent right at the beginning of the year. If there is no cash available, the cars will sit idle. And when the car is idle, the revenue is zero. In economics, recessions are often cyclical. Prices go down, then recover. But what is noteworthy in 2025 is the simultaneous combination of many forces. falling freight rates, high fuel costs, increased insurance, slow cash flow, intense competition. This is not just a down cycle. This is a structural crisis where profits are squeezed down and risks are pushed onto each driver and small business. So the question for you is, if an industry can only survive when participants accept razor-thin profits and constant cash flow pressure, is it still a sustainable model? In the next part, we will look at the reactions of those within the industry themselves, the loss of trust, nostalgia, and concerns about the future of automation. If you find these analyses help, you see the bigger picture behind the numbers, you can subscribe to the channel to follow the entire investigative journey. If data is the tip of the iceberg, then audience comments are the submerged part where true emotions are swirling. When reading hundreds of comments, one thing becomes clear. This is not just a profit crisis. This is a crisis of trust. Many people candidly say that the phrase driver shortage does not accurately reflect the reality. According to them, the issue does not lie in the number of people with a CDL, but in the market structure. From a strategic perspective, when the mainstream narrative is no longer trusted, the greatest cost is not money, but the system's credibility. Imagine this. If an industry keeps saying we are short-staffed, while those in the field see too many trucks chasing too few goods, then that perceptual gap is like two trains running in opposite directions on the same track. What do you think this gap will lead to in the long term? In addition, many comments mention the discrepancy between the amount the shipper pays and the amount the carrier actually receives. For example, a shipment might be worth $3,500 at the beginning of the chain, but by the time it reaches the driver, it's only about $2,000. In MBA terms, it's a matter of profit margin allocation in the value chain. But for the one behind the wheel, it's a very simple feeling. They bear the heaviest burden, but receive the smallest share. This feeling is not loud, but it accumulates like a psychological debt. And then, a paradox emerged. Many drivers admitted that the industry lacked solidarity. They know that if they all refuse the low prices, the market could adjust, but everyone is afraid of being the one to stop first. That's the prisoner's dilemma highway version. In theory, cooperation is optimal. In reality, short-term survival prevails. Can an industry rebalance itself if its members do not trust each other? There are simple shares, switching to another industry, more stable income, better family life. This could be the most thought-provoking signal. When people leave feeling relieved instead of regretful, the system is losing not just labor, but loyalty as well. So, in your opinion, if profits thin out and trust follows suit, what will happen next? In the next part, we will look to the future where automation and technology begin to come into the picture. What will happen? When humans begin to tire, history often presents a familiar choice: replace them with machines. At the end of 2024, driverless sand trucks began operating on closed routes in the Permian Basin. No cabins lit up at midnight, no drivers waiting for hours in the desert. Only sensors, algorithms, and routes calculated in milliseconds. By 2025, longer routes such as Houston, Dallas are mentioned as the next step in the automation journey. In the presentation slides of tech startups, the problem sounds very clear. No salary, no vacation, no burnout, no fare increase required. Clearly, this is labor cost optimization turning a variable cost into an initial investment cost, which is then gradually depreciated over time. If a driver can operate for 10-11 hours a day, then an automated system can run nearly 24/7, double the operational time, reduce personnel risk, but the question lies in the motivation. Automation appears to reduce pressure on drivers, or is it because repairing the wage model, profit distribution, and transparency of the value chain is too complex and costly. Imagine a house with a cracked foundation. You have two options: reinforce the foundation, time-consuming and costly, or build a new floor with different materials, ignoring the old part. Technology is like that new floor, shiny, modern, but it doesn't address the core question about the original structure. It is noteworthy that automation does not inherently carry ethics. It amplifies the system it enters. If the system prioritizes cost-cutting over balancing benefits, technology will do it more efficiently than ever. So, in your opinion, when hauling freight stopped paying, is automation the inevitable escape or the final chapter of an era of long-haul labor? In the conclusion, we will return to the central question: does America really lack drivers? Or does it lack a model fair enough for them to want to stay? From the heyday of highway cowboys to the structural crisis of 2025, this story is not just about freight rates or diesel. It speaks to something deeper. When a profession that once sustained the middle class begins to no longer be enough to retain its very operators. 1.93 per mile is not just a number. It is a symbol of a bigger question. Does America really lack drivers? Or is it lacking a fair enough system for them to want to stay? Do you think the problem lies in the free market? In the profit distribution structure? Or in the way the industry has operated for decades? Will automation be the solution? Or just a transition to a harsher model? I would love to hear your perspective in the comments. Real insights from industry professionals will help this discussion go beyond just numbers on paper. If you are interested in in-depth analyses of the economy, labor, and industries changing under market pressure, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next episodes. The content in the video is built based on press sources, public research, and opinions from industry insiders, with the purpose of analysis and discussion, not intended to criticize or target any specific individual or organization. Thank you for watching until the end. See you in the next video.